This episode of Linux Action Show is brought to you by GoDaddy.com.
And by Ting.com. Head over to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device.
Welcome to the Linux Action Show. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
And this is Season 26, Episode 3 of The Big Show. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Should I tell folks what we got coming up?
Let's hear it.
All right, we have a fun show this week. Coming up in the second half of the show, Allan from TechSnap joins us to cover Puppet.
Sweet.
Now, Puppet is a really cool technology that lets you manage hundreds or thousands of Linux systems. Maybe you've heard your Windows admin friend say, you know what I have on my Windows box?
And they always do it in that voice, too.
I've got Active Directory. Yeah. I've got group policy. I can push MSI packages out to my workstations without issue.
We're going to throw down some Puppet action.
That's right. You can punch him in the face with some knowledge because we're going to show you Puppet. Allan manages hundreds of Scale Engine servers, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his setup, and I think you'll be really impressed. Plus, in the news segment, we're going to talk about the new Linux Mint Debian Edition that just came out, and we've got some details on how the Fedora project plans to implement Wayland, and they're doing something really interesting with it, so we'll cover that. And, of course, we've got some feedback coming up and some picks right now. So we got a heck of a show.
Heck of a show. Big show.
What do you say we start with the Runs Linux this week?
Let's hear it.
All right, Matt, NVIDIA's CEO runs Linux. Yeah, he was at an official NVIDIA event. The roadmap for Tegra processors was being demoed at GTC 2013, and he was showing Kayla, which is a very high-end chipset that they have coming up, but you know, at the power range of the much lower-end embedded chips. So it's going to be a big leap for that kind of built into the board type stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And it's interesting after the whole Linus blank U NVIDIA thing.
Oh, yeah,
This is kind of an interesting throwback to that.
Very true, Matt. Very true. So check out this video here of NVIDIA's CEO. He was showing off the capabilities of the new Tegra chips, and he just is very nonchalantly running Linux here. Let's watch.
All right, Bass, show me Kayla. All right, so this is Kayla. Kayla is running real-time ray tracing. And this real-time ray tracer is, it's
for you audio listeners, it's very impressive real-time ray tracing demo that you can move around.
You
Usually
can see
would take
the transparencies,
forever to draw that.
the reflection, the refraction, the caustics. I mean, it's really quite amazingly beautiful. This is, remember, this is Kayla. Okay, it just launched Smoke. These are all the same demos that we've been showing throughout the years on these massive GeForces and massive Teslas. Oh, wow, you're killing me.
All of this is happening.
OpenGL geometry shaders. The point here is the entire modern software stack that we know of, the most advanced computing software stack we know of, CUDA 5, OpenGL with programmable geometry shaders, Linux,
Bing,
physics processing.
There you go.
All running at the same time on this little tiny computer. Pretty
all
amazing.
running under Ubuntu on the Unity desktop. Pretty awesome. And what I love about it is how it's just, this is how we're doing it. We just, oops, hi there. We just want to be on the most advanced computing platform. So here we are. We're demonstrating our new stuff. And oh yeah, by the way, it's Linux. And I remember, I mean, see, to me, whenever you see a demo on a stage during a keynote, it's either a Mac or it's Windows.
Always. It seemed like always, unless it was something really
unless they're selling a Linux-specific product. And so when you see a head of a very important company in the industry talking about the next generation that is very important to them from a strategic standpoint, and he's talking about using it and not just using it on Linux, but calling Linux the premier platform for it. I thought that was really awesome.
You know, it could finally be, and I'm going to beat this term to death, this is the year of Linux.
The year of the Linux desktop?
Telling you.
Oh, man.
We might finally be there.
So if you're an audio listener, but you wanted to go watch that for yourself, we'll have a link to the YouTube video. It obviously made its rounds online this week. I saw a few sites covering it, but yeah.
It's something you really visually need to see to absorb the full impact.
It is. I mean, you can hear it. It's one thing to hear his words, but just to see Linux up on that huge screen.
Running all these different instances. It's like, hello.
Yep.
And then the fact that, wait a minute, what kind of what's this running on? This isn't what you told me it was embedded, I think, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, that's a big
way of the future, Matt.
It's a big deal.
It's a way of the future.
Way of the future.
All right, Matt. Well, before we go on, I got to take a minute and say, you know what we have to do?
What do we got to do?
We need to thank the fine... Oh, look, my Google Docs just logged me out again.
That's important.
You know, Google Docs.
I don't have that problem. I don't know why.
It happened just before the show too.
Oh, well, because are you in two different instances?
I am.
Maybe
I admit,
that doesn't like that.
See,
It just doesn't like you.
I say that's bogative because I use it all the time. So
I
say,
personally think they've hired a dedicated employee to sit over their computer and say, okay, show starting, log them out.
yeah, maybe. You might be right on that. You might be right.
Just saying.
All right, so I want to thank GoDaddy.com for sponsoring this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. And of course, they're longtime sponsors of the Linux Action Show, so they are giving us some great deals because, well, honestly, they love you guys and they love being on this show. And for the month of March, which is almost out.
Yeah, it's almost April. Oh,
Whoa.
too soon.
I know, it means Linux Fest is coming up. Use the code HOSTDEAL3 when you check out over at thegodaddy.com, and you'll get economy hosting for $1 a month for a
Nice.
year. Yeah, that's very nice.
Really cool.
So that's a great opportunity. It expires at the end of March. So what is that? That's like if you're watching this, you have until next Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you really need to get on it, and what a great way to start out a new project and kind of test the waters.
Get something off your home network,
Sure.
or put up a pilot project for $1 a month. It's absolutely worth it. Host Deal 3 when you check out over at GoDaddy. And now, of course, that's only going to be available for just a little bit longer. So go over there and take advantage of that while you can, you guys. And don't forget, we also are still offering Go 35 off 3. Go 35 off 3 gets you 35% off a new order.
Gotta love that.
You really do gotta love that. So thanks to GoDaddy, thanks to the wonderful Danica Patrick, who was just texting me last night, actually.
Again?
Well, she's very interested in Linux Mint Debian Edition. She's not so sure where Ubuntu and Canonical are going with Mir.
She's kind of leaning for the Debian there.
And she wants to integrate a brand new full touchscreen computer in her race car, and she's concerned that she's going to get everything built up on Ubuntu, and then Mir's going to come along and ruin the whole thing. So,
But she wants me to wear a monkey suit. That's really what she's saying. I mean, that's my takeaway here is that, I'm just saying.
yeah. Danica.
I don't want to wear a monkey suit.
Yeah, well, you never know. So the only way to convince Danica is if everybody goes and uses the code HostDeal3, and then maybe when she sees that kind of response, she'll change her mind.
I think she will.
Or maybe not.
I think she will.
Yeah,
And she'll
I
keep
don't
getting
know,
us those
man.
codes. She'll
I
keep getting
don't
us those codes.
know. She might actually want it even more. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so this week, and thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring this week's show. This week, Matt, you have a... Did you text me? That would be really ironic. No, it was an email.
No, I emailed you.
You said we got to make this. We got to talk about this Android app.
Yes.
And now we are fully admitting that yes, we talked about a messaging app last week, Kick
Yes,
Messenger.
we did.
But Kick Messenger is its own private network.
That's right.
And
And there are other apps similar to this even.
Yeah. But you wanted something that is a really good texting experience and uses the standard SMS text network because that's what you use.
Exactly.
That's what a lot of people use.
And for me personally, it wasn't so much about being able to send or receive text. Primarily, it's also about a lot of times I'll have my phone stuck somewhere and I'm not paying a lick of attention to what's going on. I don't hear it ring or I'm just not paying attention. I've got headphones on.
Yeah.
This will send my phone calls with the name of the person calling through this service so that I can say, oh, I need to pick up my phone.
You can actually text from your computer
And you
too.
can text
it's
and
called
exactly.
MightyText,
It's
and it is
sweet.
free.
It's totally free. It's totally easy to
And
set
so
up.
if I'm a big SMS user, this looks like it also has. This is like a tablet UI. So like I could.
very much. You could. Tablets, Android.
So if I want to SMS from my tablet, and then this must be here the phone UI, which looks quite nice.
And of course, you can use it in Chrome.
Oh yeah. So they got like a Chrome extension.
Exactly.
Well, it's got a ton of really good ratings and lots of downloads. It's got almost look at that. Is that 5 million? That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's because it actually works. I've used a few others and they're pretty. This one actually works and it has functions that I like.
Yeah, dude, man, people are digging on this thing. So go check it out. It's called MightyText. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. Absolutely free. And if you are someone who likes to text but prefers to use standard text, like Matt here, he just grabs himself a bunch of text messages.
I do. I got the unlimited
And then
plan
you're
and I
covered.
like to use it.
Yeah, very cool. MightyText, and we'll have a link to that in the show
Yes.
notes. All right, Matt. Cool. I have a pick this week that echoes an obsession of mine, and that is a very nice, streamlined Bitcoin wallet for Linux.
That's really cool.
It's called Electrum. And Electrum is an easy-to-use Bitcoin client. It protects you from losing coins by having a backup that can be recovered by a seed secret. Now, you do have to have the secret key, and you have to not lose that. So it's...
But that's reasonable. I mean, that's pretty... we live in a Linux world. We know this.
Yeah. What's great is, a lot of times you just hear, one of the things that happens a lot of times with Bitcoin is people format their machine and forget their wallet.
Right. Oops.
So it's nice that it can be recovered from a secret seed. Here's the thing I really like about Electrum. If you're a Bitcoin user, you've noticed that the blockchain is getting very large. And when you start your Bitcoin client, it has to download the entire blockchain. Well, now it's like 1.2 gigabytes.
Holy cow.
It's quite the download. This does a cloud-hosted blockchain, so it just fires right up. So I'll give you, I got a little...
That's kind of slick. I like that.
Let's do a little demo, Matt.
All right.
I've got Electrum installed right here. It fires right up. And I don't actually use this computer as my main wallet, so I don't have anything in here.
Sure,
so it's kind of a
course.
plain demo.
Right.
But it gives you shows you the app. You can set up an address book of people you want to send and receive Bitcoins to.
So for audio listeners, we're working with a tab system, history, send, receive, so on and so forth.
What's neat about Electrum is it has a Qt front end, a GTK front end, and
Nice.
see if I think I have it. Do I have it in my path? I do have it in my paths. Check this out. It also has, I think I do --G GUI, and then I'll say text, and it has an N curses.
Oh, seriously, it's
so
awesome.
you can use it. You could SSH into your
man.
machine and use it at the terminal in an N curses interface. Now, of course, there's not much to show because
But that's still geeky, and I like that. That's cool.
if this was my actual wallet and I had a bunch of transactions in
Yeah.
here, that would be really cool. So
True.
I know probably not a lot of you are Bitcoin enthusiasts, but those of you are, check out Electrum if you've been noticing the blockchain's just getting to be a monster.
Well, it's cool to see Linux being a big part of this Bitcoin trend.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Some of the best,
awesome.
some of the best Bitcoin stuff is on Linux. So
Good stuff.
you know, the two kind of go well together. And to
Yes.
that end, I'm making an announcement right here on the show. If you have any interest in joining me on a Bitcoin show, go over to bit.ly/Bitcoin draft. Bit.ly/Bitcoin draft. I am considering starting a Bitcoin show here on the network. I'm not totally committed to it yet, but I want to kick it around. And if there's somebody out there who thinks they might want to sit in the co-host seat with me, I'd like to hear from you. So I've set up a little form. If you go over to bit.ly/Bitcoin draft, you'll see the questions there. I have a few questions, and then you submit. It goes into the draft folder, and then I'll be checking those out as I start developing the show and contacting people who meet sort of whatever it is that I decide I'm looking for. It's all kind of very early days, but that's why I'm putting it out there now, is because if I find the right co-host, I'd like to co-develop it with you potentially.
And of course, we'll have this in the show notes for you. So
Yep.
if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in front of my TV set and I don't have anything to write, don't worry about it.
But so yeah, go to bit.ly/Bitcoin draft, and if we do this, we're going to make the world's best Bitcoin podcast.
That's gonna be cool.
It's going to be, and it will be the world's largest too if we do it right and do it right now. So let me know. I'd like to get this thing rolling, and the time window of opportunity is narrowing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you want to get on it.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, I think that's everything we had for the pick segment.
All right.
So let's do the news.
It's time for the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. My friends, Ting.com is my new cell phone provider who I love. Ting.com is no BS mobile service.
Yes.
It's mobile that makes sense. And I have a Galaxy Note 2 here, loaded with the Ting service.
Sweet.
I got to tell you, Matt, this thing has become my all-time companion. I'm not using my Nexus 7 anymore.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, no, it is fantastically awesome. Let me tell you, this combined with the great Ting service has really made me happy. Now, this is why Ting is a great sponsor for this show, because Ting really does make sense to people out there like us, people who want contract-free, people who don't want any BS secret stuff hidden on their bill. And here's another thing. You got to figure maybe Ting's going to be the way of the future here.
I think so. I think the fact that they let you a la carte your
This is
setup
the big thing for me. You can mix and match your plan as you want, but you say you overshoot. Say you go, oh, I'm going to use 500 minutes.
I could see myself doing that.
Yeah, and then you know what? You only end up using 100 minutes. Not a
Right.
big deal. Not a big deal at all. Ting credits you on unused service. If you use less than you thought you would, Ting drops you down to the level and then hits you with the difference on your next bill. I love
you
that.
gotta love that, because then you don't feel like you've been shafted, or it's like then you're not stressing out. Oh, okay, I've got to use just the right amount.
Right.
Don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. Not with Ting.com. And that's one of the great things is you also have maybe other family members or coworkers you want to use the service with. Ting is going to be super easy for them to use. Not only do they have a very nice web UI that makes managing your account and seeing when you're at very easy and very obvious, but they also make it very, very simple to add a new phone. You log into your account, flat $6 a month, then the phone's on there. And then if they get stuck and they need some help, just have them call 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern, and a real person picks up the phone. A human being that can help them with their problems so you don't have to worry about it. I love Ting, and I've been using them now for about a month.
I love
and
that.
very, very satisfied.
I love their UI, because I've gone through probably on most of the major carriers. And
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, whoa, this actually is cool. I can actually find what I'm looking for. This is really nice.
Absolutely. And with my Ting plan in here, I went in and I just customized it just to my needs. So I just went low. I went load voice minutes. I went zero text because I'm using Google Voice, and I went a gigabyte on the data. And we're talking $33 a month. That includes tethering and hotspot. That sold me right there. And you know what? If I go over a little bit, not a big deal. Ting just charges me for what I use. There's no major overage charges.
Wait,
I love
backtrack on that. $33 a month for hotspot and tethering as well as your regular services.
Yeah.
Hello.
I know. This is what I'm saying. Some other providers would charge you just $33 for the tethering.
Yeah, I've been there. I know.
So, I really think Ting is a great fit for our audience. A lot of the people who watch our shows are on the cutting edge of technology, and we watch trends. We adopt things because we know that's where the world is going to move to. That's what Ting is.
Yes.
Ting is where I hope the world is going to move to, because this is really what's good for the customer.
Oh, absolutely.
So
and I think it will.
Thanks to Ting, not only for supporting this show, and don't forget you can go to last.ting.com to get $25 off your first device or service credit, last.ting.com. But also thanks to Ting just for shaking things up finally.
Yeah, definitely.
Just shaking
and
it up.
big Android supporters. That's awesome.
That is awesome too. And they've got some great Android devices, so go check those out. So anyway, thank you to ting.com, and thank you to everybody who visits last.ting.com.
Yes.
All right, Matt, let's talk about Linux Mint Debian Edition.
Some little Debian
Now,
edition.
this one's a little hard because they don't really have these quote-unquote exact releases, but they have these snapshot releases. This is a rolling distribution.
Yes, it is.
But the 2013-03 version has been released, and I think it's a good time to just remind folks this is out there with some of the hoopla that's been going on recently in the Ubuntu camp. And the LMDE, as it's called for short, has a couple of nice features. First of all, latest and hottest Cinnamon and Mate. They've also done some improvements to their installer, but there's a couple of gotchas I want to let people know about, because I think you're going to have people switching to this.
Oh, yeah?
It's, I mean...
Because I've been advocating for some time now that Linux Mint isn't foolish. They know that they need to not put all their chips in one basket. So they diversified.
This project is important for them because it keeps them independent and less dependent on Canonical.
Exactly.
And it gives users an option who are not happy with Canonical's route, but still prefer the Debian-based and want a nice UI on top of it, right? Not that you couldn't get there with Debian straight, but one of the nice things about Linux Mint Debian Edition is it's 100% Debian compatible. So you can use this to get going with Debian. You get a nice UI, you get some fresh packages, and you're still keeping compatibility with mainline Debian. So I think that's a huge benefit. Now, there is a problem, and I want to bring this up because this has been biting some of our listeners in the audience who've been getting new machines. Linux Mint Debian Edition at present does not have EFI or GPT or Secure Boot support.
Wow.
So if you've got one of those new machines that it doesn't offer BIOS emulation, you're not actually going to be able to boot it. Now, I'm sure they're going to be working on this. And Debian already supports this, so this isn't a Debian limitation.
Right.
This
it probably just hasn't been implemented yet.
It's part of their new installer.
Yeah.
So Mint has written their own graphical installer for Debian. In fact, here's a little ditty about that. They say the live installer is developed from scratch with Debian in mind. It's configurable and can be reused by other Debian-based distributions.
That's cool.
Yeah. They say, we've noticed a lack of live technologies and live Debian installers, so we're happy to take this lead on.
Wow.
But that does mean they're going to be... So
it's a catch-22, but I see it as a short-term thing.
It's a catch-22. It's just funny because I've actually seen a lot of blowback on some forums about the lack of EFI support and Secure Boot. And like, Debian has this. How could you ship it without this? And I'm just,
well, it's on their page, black and white, under cons. They're calling attention to it. You knew what you're getting
The other thing is, Debian doesn't need a new installer, but I think the Mint project disagrees, and I'm sure they'll add it. So I just didn't think the controversy was very well deserved. But I big props to the...
Well, and Debian, or Linux Mint Debian Edition versus Debian are completely different audiences, quite honestly.
True.
This is more of a Simply Mepis audience, really.
I like the idea of getting a really nice Cinnamon implementation of Debian.
I do.
A Cinnamon desktop, Debian underneath. I could take that.
Sure.
Speaking of Debian, some good news from the Debian camp. We may be seeing the next release, Debian 7.0 Wheezy, around Easter. The current progress with everything so far, it's not sure. They're calling it the hot phase right now.
Right.
This is from an article that Fab wrote over on H Online. It says less than 100 bugs remain. Half of those, the developers have already decided to ignore the problems in question or drop the packages if the patches are not submitted soon.
Well, they're cutting through the nonsense.
I'm sure it's nothing critical.
No.
So taking that current progress into account, it's possible that Debian Wheezy could be released over the Easter holidays.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's really what a nice little Easter. What an Easter egg in your basket, right?
Right? Oh. So speaking of Debian, there you go. A little update from the Debian camp. And speaking of Easter, we should mention that Matt and I are currently planning to shoot next weekend's Linux Action Show Saturday at 1 p.m., which is 4 p.m. Eastern at jblive.tv. So that way we can make room for Easter morning.
Yep.
So we normally shoot Sundays over at jblive.tv, 10 a.m. Pacific, but we'll be doing it Saturday, one day earlier at 1 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern.
That's right. I have an Easter tradition that involves me eating hard-boiled eggs and dressing up like a rabbit, so it's important to me.
Wait a minute. If you're going to be dressed up like a rabbit, we should do the show on Sunday then. Because I want to see that.
Whoops, I thought I was thinking that in my head, not saying it out loud.
All right, so this story has been interesting to watch develop. It's funny because I started following it in Unfilter. It was the first story in Unfilter. Then we covered a couple of technical notes in TechSnap, but we didn't have a lot to go on. Sure. And now here on Sunday, so let's see, that would be Wednesday, then Thursday, now Sunday, we've finally gotten some details on this South Korea attack. The South Korea was attacked by Cyberattack hackers. And it turns out their Linux boxes were affected. Oh. You don't often hear about Linux boxes.
No, you really don't.
Yeah,
but I've always argued if it execute code,
And the boxes got wiped. The Linux boxes were destroyed in some cases. Or at least have to be reloaded. And so Symantec, all holders of true security knowledge about Linux, files this finding, and it was covered over.
Oh, they're loving it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, for their perspective.
By the way, I'm sure they'll be announcing Symantec antivirus for Linux soon. Tucked inside a piece of Windows malware used in the attacks was the Linux malware. So check this out.
It's arrived.
The
malware
for Linux was stashed inside the Windows malware that originally infected the Windows user. So this is from Symantec. They say, we do not normally see components that work on multiple operating systems. So it's interesting to discover that the attacks included a component to wipe Linux machines inside the Windows threat, Symantec says on their blog. What was it? This is the part that is a little funny. It was a bash shell script that just attempts to erase all of the partitions on a Unix system or a Linux system or an HP UX system.
And I've been saying it for years, and I've been laughed at for years. It'll never happen to Linux. If it can execute code, it's vulnerable. I don't care what it is.
So here's how the users got infected. There was websites that had been hacked to serve up an iframe that delivered an attack that was hosted on another website, right? That's what the point of an iframe is. Sure. The actual code in the iframe exploits a vulnerability in Internet Explorer that dates back to July of 2012 that had already been patched from Microsoft. So it's a drive-by iframe vulnerability. Somebody's just they break into somebody's site, they put the iframe on there, then the user, using freaking Internet Explorer that's unpatched, at least from July of 2012, browses the site, downloads the malware, infects their machine, and then that machine then launches the attack against the Linux box, which then executes a bash shell script, which must have somehow gotten root access if it could wipe out the partitions. Which that doesn't make a lot of sense right there.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how that, although there's some, I've heard of people running as root. It does happen.
Yeah.
Sadly, scarily.
So pretty wild to watch that. And I remember hearing the reporting, and somebody mentioned a Linux box had been erased, and I thought, no.
No, that can't be it.
No.
But I still say there's probably somebody running root.
Well, you were right, Matt. You were right. It is funny, though. Like the chat room's pointing out, Fort in the chat room says, it seems like the best way to attack... Oh, it was HW Killer. Best way to attack a Linux box is still through Windows.
Telling you.
Yeah, well, it's because they needed the low-hanging fruit. And then, so this is something we talk about a lot on TechSnap. Is it's called island hopping a lot of times. You break in at one spot, and then once you use that, even if it's something that's not that critical, you can use that to hop to the next more important island, and you hop to the next island. That's how it happens.
It's a nice example of it. That's like, oh boy.
So speaking of cyber foes, China has a pretty big announcement in conjunction with Canonical. The Chinese government is going to start using Ubuntu as their official operating system of the Chinese government. They're calling it CISP, not CISPA. The China Software and Integrated Chip Promotion Center has announced a new reference architecture for Chinese operating systems. CISP is using Ubuntu as the basis for that reference architecture to create a flexible, open, widely used, and standardized operating system. I love the idea of taking something, altering it, for your needs and then calling that standardized. I think that's adorable. But I mean, I guess it will be inside their country walls.
Well, they're
right?
doing it apparently. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Now, this part I thought was maybe the most interesting bit of all this, because we've heard of, Red Hat versions for China, Red Linux.
It's like red flag
whatever.
or whatever it was.
Right. So this isn't completely unheard of, but what I thought was interesting from the announcement was engineers from these 3 organizations will be hosted by this lab to drive development of a China-focused version of Ubuntu. So that means engineers from Canonical are going to be staffed there. The Chinese Ubuntu is called Ubuntu Klin or Kin. It's K-Y-L-I-N. K-Y. Not K-Y jelly, K-Y-L-I-N. Which was recently added to the Ubuntu family as an official flavor. The first version of Ubuntu Kin will be released on April 25th along with the other Ubuntus.
I hope that I'm just going to leave this here and say I sincerely hope that all of the code is open source, and I'm just going to leave it as that because this is China. So,
additionally, CISP and Canonical, this is on Canonical's official announcement, will be working with the National University of Defense Technology and have formed the Open Source Innovation Joint Lab in Beijing. So the lab will be in Beijing, and the joint lab will have engineers from the defense company, from the chip company, and from Canonical, who will accelerate the development of the China-focused version of Ubuntu for the desktop and for the cloud. The initial work will be focused on enhancing the version of Ubuntu Desktop with features specific for the Chinese market. Starting with the 1304 release, Chinese input methods and Chinese calendars are supported. There are new weather indicators, and users can quickly search across the most popular Chinese music services from the dash. Future releases will include integration with maps, Chinese maps, leading shopping services, payment processing for Chinese banks, and real-time train and flight information.
Wow. Okay, well, I mean, I guess it makes sense. You got a big market there, so I guess there's that. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, as long as everything is, so initially all of their work is going to be focused on making this thing dialed in for their market, right?
And that's reasonable. I'm fine with that. I'm just wondering what's going to get slid into
that. Only takes so long.
Yeah.
Well, you're worried about Chinese.
Yeah, I'm worried about how many government sensors.
They can already do that.
Yeah, I know that.
So,
but the fact that you have a company that's already struggled with PR doing this now.
Oh,
it's like, come on.
Oh, working with China?
Yeah, I mean,
because China's the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of.
I hadn't thought of it like. They're not. No.
Yeah, I mean,
dude, you
owe them
cannot
everything, right? I mean,
no, you cannot go down that path because every big company in America is doing business in a big way in China.
Oh yeah, but they're better PR. I'm just saying they haven't had some of the more recent PR snafus. I'm just saying they got to spin this early.
I think it'll turn out good. I think it'll turn out good.
I hope so. I really do. I mean, it makes sense. I think it's fantastic to tap.
I think they'll customize it for the China market, and then after that, they'll probably start making improvements to the overall.
And just be open as you possibly can because it's going to save you guys a lot of face.
Yeah,
it really will.
Yeah.
So, just saying.
So there you go. That is an interesting development. I actually think it's overall going to be a positive thing.
I think so. And again, from a market perspective, I understand it. It does make sense.
It's the kind of deal you'd actually expect to hear Red Hat announce. Really, if you think about it. Setting up a lab where you'll have engineers working together.
They're kind of set up.
I mean, remember when Novell and Microsoft were making out and flirting a lot? They set up a little co-development lab and did little Microsoft.
Well, it's
Novell
a big market, and I mean, it makes sense financially for them. So go for it.
Let's stay one more story before we get off Ubuntu and move on to Fedora. Ubuntu has announced that they will halve support length for long-term support releases. Okay. This goes back to the conversation around rolling releases and all of that, and maybe even dropping releases altogether.
Right.
So the technical leadership of Canonical's Linux distribution decided to have the non-LTS support to 9 months. Non-LTS. So 1210, for example. Okay. We'll have 9 months. So you get 6 months, you get the new release, and then after that you get 2 months of support before you need to move on to the next one.
That's not LTS. That's fine.
No, and this was
reasonable.
I watched the Ubuntu Developer Summit sessions, and the big takeaway I had is sort of the thing that pushed the rolling release discussion forward was the team is being overwhelmed by continuing to backport patches to older versions and non-LTS versions.
It's not time
of Ubuntu.
well spent.
And they're like, we'd rather work on the new release instead of working on the old releases. And the more releases they have, the more and more time that's taking. So this was sort of like, instead of dropping that altogether, this is sort of finding a happy medium where we're still going to do support, but we're going to shorten the time. And if you really want longer support than that, then you should be using LTS anyways, because that's what LTS is about.
Makes sense.
So also unanimously agreed upon was voting not to switch to a rolling release model. So we have an official technical board decision.
Probably going to be a good thing. Yeah.
The decision by the distribution's technical board seems in line with Shuttleworth's idea to accelerate development and release this and increase the release cycles of Ubuntu without giving up scheduled releases entirely.
Cool.
So there you go.
Good, good, good.
So things are pretty much going to stay the same, except for interim releases won't be supported for as long, and you might see more progress towards rolling releases in some way.
I'm okay with that.
Let's talk about how Fedora plans to use Wayland.
Oh, yes.
What do you think, Matt? Anyways, just practicing, right?
Yeah, yes. I got to get my monkey on.
So I thought this was a really neat system that for now Fedora's getting real serious about Wayland. All of a sudden, for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Timing's awesome. Clearly, you don't watch the show.
I don't know why all of a sudden they'd care about Wayland.
Thanks so much, yeah.
So check out what they're doing, though. So they're getting ready. They think they're going to have a way to implement Wayland without really screwing things up. In particular, it won't force other desktop environments to move away from X. GDM will learn to launch the Wayland-based sessions, but will still be able to start X-based sessions. So X applications will continue to run as they used to, including remotely, so you can do remote X sessions.
Sure.
And GNOME applications can continue to work under X just fine. So that means XFCE isn't going to have to jump on Wayland in order to run on Fedora.
That's
right?
That's a good thing from an adoption
So
point of view.
GDM's going to be smart enough to say, oh, you need X, I'll start the X session.
Right,
oh, you
right.
need... So I don't know exactly how they'll do that. I don't know what GDM's
kind of
going to be
interesting
running
to see how
under,
that works out. Yeah.
So in starting with Fedora 19, they'll have the Wayland reference compositor available.
Okay.
In 19. GTK3 and Clutter are built with Wayland backends turned on.
Okay.
And those possible certain GTK applications will have at build time the GTK backend set to Wayland. Starting, though, in Fedora 20, they'll have GNOME Shell that can run as a Wayland compositor. Now, this is big because this is also going to require code in GNOME to be changed to work with Wayland as its compositor. So this is also in Fedora 20 is when GDM will start getting smart enough to kick off Wayland or X. And there will be experimental GNOME Wayland sessions that the user will be able to choose from, but it probably won't be even installed by default. It might just be an optional package. Then, starting with Fedora 21, Wayland-based GNOME will be the default, but a GNOME/X session will still be available for fallback purposes.
That's cool. Okay.
I think this is a
very
really
cool.
smart plan. I think this really makes a lot of sense. And I think what they're doing here is they're basically saying, all right, this is how Red Hat and Fedora are going to do it. What do you other guys got?
I think so. And I also think they watch the show.
I want it now. I want it right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to go download Rebecca Back Linux. Let's go do that. Okay. Just let's talk about some video games before we get out of here, okay? One is the Humble Indie Bundle guys made some headlines this week when they announced that they would be switching up to a weekly sale. What do you think of this, Matt?
That's really cool. Hey, you know what? It's putting more games into people's pockets or into their
drives. I mean, I'm skeptical. Chris is skeptical. Right now, it's Bastion, and Bastion's a great game, and it's the same old deal. You pay for what you want. I am worried about a Humble Bundle fatigue with this. The other thing is are they committing to a Linux release every single week?
It looks that way. I mean, it's kind of where things are directing to.
How can they do that?
I do not know. Maybe it's just the features are more just gloss. It's hard to say.
So, if you haven't grabbed Bastion yet, oh no, I mean, there's supposed to be game ports, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
well, then
I
don't know how, unless...
Maybe
they didn't think that through. I don't know.
Let's see. Average Linux price currently going $3.87. Average Mac price $3.24. Average Windows price $2.51. The Linux price is not as high ahead, and this is what my point is I think
maybe people are burning out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Linux users will spend money when you give them the option, but you can't keep. I mean, nobody's just going to keep spending money over and over again.
Sure.
But it says that it's the same old setup. You pay for what you want. Games are DRM free. They're gonna some of them will be optionally available on Steam. They support Mac, Windows, and Linux.
Well, that's. Hopefully, it could be.
So maybe we're gonna have a weekly new Linux game.
Maybe they will.
I don't know.
They will. Maybe they've got something in play we don't know.
The thing that kind of sucks is their timing is such that by the time we cover it, it's only got like 1 day left on the bundle. So, but whatever.
All more reason. Get out there and do it. It's cheap.
Go for it. Just keep an eye on the Humble Bundle. So I don't know if we'll be covering each one. Just because the timing doesn't really work out for our show very well. If they launched them like on a Friday, then when we cover them, they'd still have several days left, but they don't. All right, so I spent some money this Friday. This happens, man. Sometimes I'm sitting down here and I'm working on preparing for this show, and I'm reading through all the sites, and I get a wild hair to go check out what's supporting Linux on Kickstarter, and then I end up backing a few projects, and it happens.
It happens.
But I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of Linux supporting Kickstarter projects that are coming out that I particularly find interesting. I think Matt, you probably like this first one too, right?
Me some OpenShot.
Yeah, the OpenShot project from Jonathan Thomas is up on Kickstarter right now. He's got 23 days to go. He's trying to get 20 grand. He's got 10 grand right now.
He's doing pretty good, actually.
He's doing all right, yeah. So the one thing that I don't know if it's really going to resonate too strongly with our audience is one of his goals with this is to go cross-platform. So he's also making Windows and Linux or Mac
it could,
releases.
It could, especially if you're working on multiple.
That could
happen.
Good.
It could.
I mean, that would be nice, right?
And it does open up additional funding. So yeah.
But that's very true too.
Yeah.
That is another avenue for him to make more money. But what's of course involved in order to do that is he's rewriting huge portions like the back end. He's making it fully FFmpeg compatible.
Sure.
You know what? So I mean, OpenShot's a great video editor. Let's play a little clip of his video here because why not? Oh, he's got dramatic music. I got that.
No, I've heard
This is
it.
Jonathan Thomas, the creator and lead developer for OpenShot Video Editor, a popular free and open source video editor for Linux. My goal is to bring OpenShot to the Windows and Mac operating systems, as well as debut a brand new, professional quality video editing framework with many great new features. Features such as improved performance and stability, a curve-based animation system, time remapping, and full support of the FFmpeg library. If you choose to back this project, you will get early access to alpha, beta, and preview releases and be one of the first people in the world to test OpenShot on Windows and Mac.
So I'll leave it there. The part that I like the best is the full FFmpeg backend because man, FFmpeg just gets better and better all the time. He's got some new fanciness in there. He's got demoed here. So you know what? I tossed in. I think he totally deserves this great project. And I wanted to see it get even better.
Yeah.
So I have a link to that. Now here's a game that maybe we could just talk about real quickly because it looks really awesome. It's called Planet Explorers, and they're pledging Linux support if they get funding. So I'm all about that.
It's a pretty lofty goal too. It's like $100,000.
Yeah, $100,000.
Wow.
With 27 days to go, they've reached 15,000 so far.
That's not bad.
Yeah, 311 backers. It's a RPG. It's a sandbox RPG where your spaceship crashes on a planet, and then you explore this crazy new world with all kinds of aliens.
Right.
I don't know what a smooth voxel-based sandbox is, but that didn't matter. I loved it.
Cool.
It looks very cool, so I've backed this. I'm really excited about this one. So that is, and again, that is Planet Explorers. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Whenever I can get a new game, because you get early access to this stuff.
Totally.
So now here's another one. Now this one I'm going to play a little clip from because it's a good one. This is Guns of Icarus Online Adventure Mode. Now Guns of Icarus we've talked about. I'm actually going to be giving away a copy to the live stream at the end of this week's show. And now that team wants to step it up another notch to Adventure Mode. They're committing to Linux support, which is awesome.
This is a game that had me going.
Doesn't that look good? Doesn't that
Guns
look?
of Icarus Online Adventure Mode is the next phase of the best airship-to-airship combat game there ever was, where we at Muse Games put real teamwork at the forefront of gameplay. Muse Games is based in New York City. We're a small team, but we dream big and do even bigger. We delivered on our previous promises on Kickstarter, and now we're back. We need your help again.
Look at that.
We've got the airship combat down to a science, and now we want to flesh out the world. The best way to interact in the world is to affect the very livelihood of towns and cities.
Gorgeous game.
Jess here has got a passion for this stuff.
Yeah, it is really gorgeous. And look at what some of they're doing. So obviously Linux support.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the biggest projects I've ever backed. I threw in at $65.
Yep.
And I don't think I've ever spent that much money. But look at one of the things they're doing for their giveaways. It's way down here. They've got a cloth map. They're going to give backers a cloth map of the world of the game.
Nice.
They've also got wait for it, a bullet USB key that is so cool. That there it is right there. Look at that.
Cool.
So that bullet that's what hooked me. I had to get that. And then for the really big players, they have like this really fancy steampunky one.
Ooh.
Yeah. One of a kind steampunk USB.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this project, well-known team. They've already produced an excellent game. It's available on Steam right now, and I know they're going to be able to deliver on this.
Totally.
And speaking of Steam, one last little thing: Steam is having a really big sale right now for Linux games.
Yes.
For example, Oregon Trail $3.99. Oregon Trail Director's Cut, which if you haven't got that yet, go get
It's a
that.
must play.
Trying to. I've told you about this game before. If you haven't bought it yet, it normally goes for $45 or no, that's what it was. $15.
Yeah.
It's going right now for $4, $3.47.
$4.
There's so many good games on Steam now for Linux. Look at this list. Look at this is page 1 of 3. Okay, on Steam, and these are all on sale.
Linux gaming has arrived.
$5, $2. So
Yes.
go check out the link. The Steam, I think it has another another 25, 30 hours left before it's up, and lots of specials. Yeah, that's why I picked up Guns of Icarus. I picked up a 4-pack so I can give away a few here on the live stream.
Gotta love that.
Yeah, so go check that out. We'll have links to all of the stories in the show notes, and I'll let you know those projects I funded as I get the Linux versions and I start to play them. I'll let you know how it goes. Maybe we'll have a review of those games.
Sweet.
Yeah,
I love that.
Looking forward to that. All right, Matt. Well, that's all the news for this week. Now, we've brought Allan in straight from the Canadian wilderness to talk about something that's pretty important if you have a lot of Linux boxes.
Yes.
It's called Puppet. You've probably heard the name before, and you probably have a vague idea, like I have, what it's used for, but Allan actually uses it in his daily job.
Yes.
So we're going to get a description from Allan how you can become a Puppet master and control multiple Linux boxes with ease. And before we get to that, I want to remind you that this segment is brought to you by our fine sponsor, System76, creators of the finest machines to run Linux around. And, of course, I am a longtime owner of System76 machines for years and years. My current main machine here is this Bonobo Extreme. And one thing I've heard from a lot of you out there is you didn't know that System76 ships internationally. So don't forget, if you're an international customer, System76 can likely ship to you. So go over to System76.com, check out some of their awesome systems, and get yourself something nice while you're over there. And thanks to System76 for sponsoring this segment. All right, Allan, so let's talk a little bit about Puppet. Now, what I know about Puppet is it's IT automation software that lets me sort of manage the configurations of a lot of machines. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and so, some people would think that Puppet's only for servers, but you can also use it for managing like a bulk of desktops or even laptops.
I think, one of the times I remembered, I think that the places I've seen it get the most traction, though, is in servers. Like, I remember back to Reddit had posted what powers Reddit, and in 2012, they mentioned one of the things that they had done that streamlined their process and helped them scale to a lot more servers was they implemented Puppet management. So I've always pretty much heard it in the
that's how I use it as well, right? I have like 70 some odd servers that I manage with it. But if you had a place where you had a lot of Linux machines as desktops or laptops or whatever, you could simplify managing, like even just like applying security updates and kind of for Linux would almost give you kind of what you did for like Windows group policies, where you could have a baseline that would be on every machine.
Okay.
Instead of having to do that manually.
So you can do something like you can set up like categories for servers and say these are my file servers and they should all conform to this standard.
Yep.
Now, I think when I would have done this in my bad old days, I probably would have gotten as far as a really fancy bash script that after I got a machine installed, I kick off this bash script and maybe it SSH copies over some config files, it installs some packages, maybe sets up a database in the root password, and I probably would have been as far as I have gone now.
Right, and that's how I started as well. Like I had this checklist of things that had to be done on a server before it went into production.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, do the updates, install this list of packages.
Right.
Copy these template config files, go into those files and change these specific values.
Make sure that, put this IP in there or something like that.
Yeah. Each machine's got 5 IPs, so I got to make sure the right ones get plugged in each place.
Right.
And it was kind of complicated and messy. And like the one config file, it would have an include file that contained only one line, which was listen on this IP address.
Right.
And so that the main config file would be the same on every server, and then that one included file would have to be manually generated on each server. And it just got to be a bit much.
Yeah, especially when you start getting, dozens of servers.
Yeah, and because I was moving, like you were saying, to having multiple categories of server, right? So I'd have, we had web application servers, we had video servers, we had CDN servers.
Right.
And then we had storage servers, and they all had to have different things.
So is this where the manifest in Puppet comes into play? You set up manifest for the types of work they do?
Yeah, so you basically, it has this object-oriented system where you can create classes and so on and inherit those, so you can all the config files in Puppet are actually written in Ruby in like a really simple style of just assigning things.
Yeah,
it's very easy to catch on.
Well,
like, I don't actually know Ruby, and I can write these config files.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the example configs, and it almost just looks like plain English. Like ensure package
it's
NTP is installed, ensure NTP is running.
Yeah, so you see on the example there. And you can add other stuff, and you can create dependencies and stuff. And so we have some more advanced config files. It's like ensure that this file exists, and then and make sure that EasyJail is installed. And then so are you with EasyJail, depending on that file having to be copied off the master server, create a new jail with that file as the archive.
So are you saying this? So in your example here, are you taking a vanilla FreeBSD install and just like doing the base install and then loading Puppet?
Yeah, I do the base install Puppet and port upgrade, which is a package manager for the port system.
Right. But it works with apt and RPM and everything.
Yeah,
right?
there's plugins for lots of different package managers. There's like there's 3 different package managers for BSD, right? You can have the old package system, ports,
right?
And then there's port upgrade, and then there's the new package NG system.
Ooh, NG.
Yes, that's it's going to be really popular soon. And so with that, you can just say, ensure this list of packages. So I've created classes for all these different packages, and each, for like Nginx, it knows default config file to copy and all that stuff.
Cool.
And then when I'm building a CDN server, I say, hey, make sure Nginx is installed. But for this type of edge server or CDN server, make sure the config is not the default one, but this other one I have.
Because it's this type, and I've identified. And so this is in conjunction, like if I understand correctly, there's a Puppet master, the master server, and then there's a client that gets installed on each machine?
Right, yeah. So there's the Puppet master, which I have running on a server, and it's set up with Nginx and multiple threads and stuff. And that contains all the manifests, which are these config files that have all the stuff. It also has modules and templates that you can customize.
Ooh.
We'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
And then on each server, we have the Puppet agent. Although sometimes we'll have more than one agent installed because we have either jails or virtual machines. So we have the host machine, which will have the Puppet agent on it.
Okay.
But then we create virtual machines on that machine, and inside the virtual machine, we'll have another agent.
Right.
And we actually treat the virtual machine as if it was a separate physical machine.
Okay, sure. Sure. So it shows up in the Puppet inventory as a complete computer.
As a complete computer, yeah.
That makes sense.
And it does all that.
That's pretty
because, the virtual machine will have different packages, or will need those packages because it's separated.
Right. And it maybe has a very specific task, so it might not, in
exactly.
most cases, it doesn't need some certain packages.
Most of our jails, we put our video server program in a jail because it runs Java and everything.
Right.
And so...
You want to be careful with Java.
Exactly. So we put the whole, it's also because Java has a lot of dependencies when you're building it, and it just
mucks up the system.
There's just a lot of stuff going on in there. And also, it helps ensure that all of our video servers stay the same.
Oh, yeah.
Because the jail, if we change something on the host OS, it doesn't change inside the jail.
Okay.
And it makes life so much easier.
Right. You don't have random changes and things like that.
And the other thing we use Puppet for is we've started playing a bit with Amazon servers, EC2s. So they boot up, they have the Puppet bootstrapped, and then they just pick up the config and it configures itself.
From your remote Puppet server?
Yeah.
So you have a Puppet server back at Scale Engine HQ that will push the config to an EC2 box?
Yeah, so the EC2 boxes generate a random host name dot, EC2 or whatever.
Right.
And then we just... And the other nice thing about Puppet is it's all SSL based. So the way it works is the agents know, like from their config file that's bootstrapped, they know, hey, connect to this Puppet master, right? And when they connect to that Puppet master, the Puppet master's like, or the agent is like, oh, I don't have a certificate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a certificate signing request for my host name and send that to the Puppet master.
Okay.
And the Puppet master will have this and have a list of machines that have asked to join your Puppet network.
Okay.
And then the Puppet master has its root, it has its own little miniature root certificate authority. And you just sign the certificates of the machines you want to allow access to your Puppet.
And it all stays within the Puppet software.
Right. And so that means it's a secure way to ensure that only the servers I want have access to my config files.
That's nice.
Right? Because if you're just pushing out config files with a script or something, well, especially if you set up with a script with SSH keys or something, so the servers are going to come and pull, they might get access to something they shouldn't.
Yeah, like I just have a DNS name in the script, right?
Yeah.
And
but like if you had a SSH key on each agent machine, they could get access to something maybe they shouldn't.
Oh, yeah. Right, it leaves the door open.
Yeah. And this it just provides more access. And you can revoke the certificate of a machine at any time.
That's nice too. So you can say, all right, this one's no longer ours. A client took it or whatever. We'll revoke access. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it's all based on the host names, and it's quite nice.
So now I guess if you've got all this data in there, I don't want to interrupt, but it just seems like to me this would be also a really easy, almost already done for you inventory system too.
Yeah, so on top of the reports and the inventory that you get from Puppet, Puppet, the agent, includes a little program called Factor, which... generates a bunch of facts about the machine. So like it knows if it's 32-bit or 64-bit. It knows how much RAM there is. It knows how many CPUs there are.
Obviously the OS.
What the speed are. Yeah, what the OS is, what the package manager is.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And you can also write your own custom facts. So you write this little script on the Puppet master, it pushes out to all the agents, and then they learn these extra facts.
Huh.
So like I can teach it, learn what jails exist on this FreeBSD machine.
Right.
And then all that information goes back into the database on the Puppet master.
Now, when you have to do this kind of stuff, is there a community out there that's writing a lot of these Ruby-type scripts?
On the Puppet Labs website, they have a lot of what are called recipes. It's a leftover when Puppet was originally forked, well, not forked, but split off from Chef.
Okay.
So they're called recipes.
I wonder where they're at over here. Podcasts. They got all kinds of stuff. This Puppet website's got a ton of really great resources.
Yeah, I think it's under the community part. But anyway, so yeah, there's lots of already done stuff. And the other great thing is if you want to learn Puppet, they have a VM, a CentOS VM that you download in VirtualBox.
And you can just get started.
And then there's like an online course and you just work through it. And
that's
you
really
try
cool.
it all. Because one of the other nice things is you don't have to have a Puppet master. If you have the manifest in just one machine even, then you can say, hey, agent, apply this manifest. So you can test the manifests on a virtual machine or on a laptop or something before you deploy them on all your servers.
And it's a good way to experiment, too. That's really cool.
Yeah, and especially with virtual machines where you can just spin them up. Right? Yeah. You make a base snapshot that has just Puppet.
Yeah.
And they config or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you take a snapshot of that, and then you can go try some stuff, throw it out, go back to the snapshot, try something else.
Right.
And but the biggest advantage to Puppet over the scripts is manifest based. So what that means is what Puppet does is when it starts, it looks at the machine. Like say you have packages, right?
Yeah.
It will take an inventory of what packages are already installed. And then you have, in your manifest, you just had, make sure this machine has Nginx installed and make sure this machine has, I forget what the example one in the earlier was. But, NTP. Make sure it has NTP.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll look and say, oh, this already has NTP. So it checks it off and doesn't try to install it again. Whereas with a script, it would try to install it again and maybe cause a problem.
Well, and in some scripts, depending on the operating system, I've had issues too where they try to install specific versions of a package or they try to build a specific version.
You can actually do things like in your manifest, you can say requires NTP at least this version.
Okay. So it'll install at least that version or newer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice. So that way you're not deploying out-of-date stuff, because this is another problem I have with a lot of automated systems.
Well, because it can handle the upgrades that way as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You can just increment what the required version is, and then it'll force an upgrade.
So you could deploy a brand new server, and Puppet would in that scenario, Puppet would essentially take care of the patching.
Yep.
Because it would install all the upgrades that it needed to.
Yeah, and but the other stuff with manifest is like config files. It can check, does this line exist in this config file? And if it doesn't, it can add it.
Nice.
There's some pretty hacky ways you can do with shell scripts, although it includes, I haven't played with it much, but there's this program, an extra part of them that comes with it as part of the agent that understands the config files and actually can find it better.
Okay.
Luckily, in FreeBSD, all the main system config files are all just key value pairs. So a little bit of, sed and awk, and you can do whatever you want with the config files, right?
Right.
So like I have, NTP_enable equals yes.
Yeah.
It searches for the NTP enable, and if it finds no, it deletes the line and replaces it with yes.
So it's actually going
to
and
doesn't
touching
find
the
line, then
wow.
Right, and it's
not, but it's not wiping the file out and replacing it with some master copy. It's just
modifying the one line.
That's so cool.
So I can push a whole config file.
Yeah.
But for some of the files, we just push a line.
Just to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other powerful thing is the templates, right? For our Varnish, one of our web accelerators.
Yeah.
The config file has a lot of variables in it, right? It's like how much RAM should Varnish use? Well, that's based on a fact. How much RAM does the server have?
Right? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Give it 40% of the RAM the box has.
So this is a sliding scale based on which
how many threads to run? Well, I want one thread group for each CPU with a maximum of 48 threads on each CPU.
And some boxes have 4 cores and some have 12 cores.
Yeah, some have 2 and some have 24.
Right.
So there's a lot of scale there.
Yeah.
And so it has these template files, which are basically just written in Ruby, right? They're plain text, and then you do the little tag to say this is the start of Ruby code, and it says multiply these two numbers together.
So the Ruby's figuring it out. The Ruby code's figuring that out, and then supplying Puppet with the answer.
The fact of how much RAM there is times 0.4. That's how much RAM you should give to Varnish.
Nice.
Or, I have one of the variables in the host definition, like the definition of this particular server, is a list of the IP addresses. Because I didn't have it set up for facts yet, and because I assign specific IPs to different jobs, so I have different arrays. It's not something I could really auto-detect.
Okay.
So it's like these 2 IPs are for web accelerators, this one's for the video, and this one's for the CDN or whatever. And so with that, it says, all right, with Varnish, I needed to write what IPs to listen on, and it had to be a comma-separated list.
Okay.
So IP : port number, comma, IP : port number, and the last one couldn't have a comma after it. So I had to write this little for each statement that would take the array out of the config file, out of my manifest, loop over it, add :80 to the end of each IP, then join that list together with commas, but not have a comma after the last one, and make one long line and print it out in the middle of a line of the template. And it could do all that, and it only took me a couple minutes.
Oh, that's
like,
nice.
I got lucky. There's a little website that's like PHP to Ruby converter. So it's like, this is how I know how to do it in PHP. How would I do it in Ruby?
Oh, nice.
It's a little website, and it's just helpful.
So I guess, I mean, I think of, from your perspective with Puppet, as you add more servers, the other thing that Puppet lets you, I would think, do is maybe hand off some of the administration to other sysadmins, maybe junior sysadmins. And say,
and well, it's just, it gives you the report. It can tell you. The other main thing about a manifest is that if there's an error, because it tries to do something and it doesn't work, it tries again. If you have a script and there's an error in the middle, most of the time your script either stops,
it dies,
or
skips over.
It skips over it and continues. And if it skips over, you don't know. And if it stops, maybe you don't know it stopped. But something doesn't have it. And then your script, you have to start from the beginning again, maybe. And if it doesn't have that detection, it duplicates a bunch of work it didn't need to do. Or whatever.
That's a big problem.
So with the manifest, it's just checking off things once they're done, and then periodically it checks them again and make sure they're still done. Because another thing is,
so it goes back and re-audits.
Yeah, like you can say ensure that the service NTP is running.
Right.
So if NTP crashes, it'll start it again. Because it notices, hey, that's not running, and it says ensure that this is running.
That is so cool. So does it generate alerts, or do you not use it for that? I know I
haven't played with it that much. It has a reporting system where it makes these XML report files. I just haven't played with it that much. There's a whole web GUI that I haven't even started using yet.
Oh, really? You're doing this all in the command line?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I just have my manifests in a Subversion repository. Check that out into the Puppet Master and tell it to apply.
That is so. Now you are mostly doing this on FreeBSD, and in fact, in the show notes we'll include a link to config management in FreeBSD using Puppet that was given by Edward Tan, right?
Yes. I started before that video when he gave the presentation in Europe,
and that was still really new on FreeBSD then, right?
Right. So I had looked at a couple, and FreeBSD support wasn't that great for Puppet yet. And then in FreeBSD, or in the BSD magazine, I saw an article by Edward Tan about how he got it working. And it's like, all right, at this point, he's gotten far enough that and if he's given a talk about it at EuroBSDCon, it's working enough that I can trust it.
Right. So you can at least take it further, maybe.
Right. Yeah. So I went through his instructions that were in the magazine, got started, and then just in time for at EuroBSDCon, I think it's actually in the video, I asked him a bunch of questions. It's like, all right, now that you got that, how do I do this now? Right?
I've run into this problem.
I was like, now I want to do custom facts and so on.
That's cool that you're able to actually connect with
and actually now that I've taken it further and still working on going even further, actually I'm giving the talk about Puppet at BSDCan.
Oh, really?
This May, yes.
Oh, cool. Well, and I always think of Puppet as a Linux technology, but obviously it works great for BSD. But on the pre-show stream, you were talking too a little bit about how you've even seen people using it to manage Windows boxes.
Yeah, there's some patches to start making it do stuff on Windows.
So you could, from one Puppet system, you could manage Linux, FreeBSD, and Windows systems.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm sure somebody's working on Mac if you had Mac desktops or something.
If you guys want to find more information, you can go to puppetlabs.com. Of course, we'll have links in the show notes and a link to the video. The video that Allan's talking about is 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's the whole presentation about it.
It's really
at
informative.
A conference, yeah. And it walks through some of the basics, and I think his slides are somewhere as well. I just don't have the link handy.
Anything else we should cover on Puppet?
What's your show notes say?
I think we got it all.
Okay.
Yeah, we got through them. The thing I was the most interested in is because right now, with some client stuff, I'm struggling with config management and inventory. And if Puppet solves both those problems for them, I think that's going to be a great solution.
Having options for the config management, right? Some configs, I have a master copy on the Puppet Master, copy it to each machine, and that's done, right?
Yeah.
Or actually on the Puppet Master, I have rc.conf.edge, rc.conf.fastcgi, rc.conf.video,
web server
or whatever. Yeah. I have a bunch of these, and it copies it to the right name on the right servers based on the
so
manifest.
do you just edit that master config file as needed and then just
and then it gets pushed out when the Puppet Master detects I did a change, it pushes it out.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and so I have these Yeah, so I have static config files that I've written and it just get pushed out to the other machine.
And so when you want to modify them, you just like SSH into that box, fire up Vi. And
well, I use Subversion to manage all this stuff.
Good idea.
So I edit it locally and then just push that as a change.
Very nice.
So that I have change management on everything.
Yeah, because if you're pushing that to all your systems, you want to be able to roll back.
Exactly. Although Puppet has a feature for that as well. When it copies a config file to a machine, it can back up the old one to the Puppet master.
Oh, I like that.
By the MD5 hash, so that it doesn't back up one. It doesn't do extra work if it doesn't have to, because it's by the MD5 hash.
Right.
So it says, oh, this is the default config file. It gets backed up once, not 100 times.
Yeah. So even across, like if I had 30 CentOS 6 servers, it would only back up the file once if they're all the same?
Yes, because if it goes by the MD5 hash for the file.
That's so cool.
So, the content is what matters.
Right.
But yeah, so I can copy a whole config file. I can make a template that does a whole bunch of stuff, right? Has variables and like for loops and stuff in the config file.
Yeah.
Or I can do the line-based thing, right? Where I just say, ensure that this line exists in this file instead of pushing a whole file out.
Man, Puppet, that is so awesome.
It is.
Well, Allan, thanks for stopping by and give us an introduction.
No problem.
Something that I think the Linux Action Show, it's one of those technologies that a lot of the viewers out there and listeners have probably heard about, but it's never really something we've dug into. So there we go. We have done our duty as Linux citizens now to give you an introduction to Puppet. All right, Matt, before we get out of here, what do you say we get to some emails?
All right.
Now, the first one actually isn't an email at all. It came from the new Jupyter Colony community we have over on Google+.
Oh, right on.
Yes, sir.
Right on.
And this one came in from Kevin, and Kevin has a question about virtualization. And he says, a few years ago, I set up a Samba server and a LAMP server for our 9-person office. Nice.
Nicely done.
Yeah,
Nicely
the Samba
done.
server consists mostly of CAD drawings and other data that is proprietary to our customers and us. The LAMP server is our secure corporate information system that is accessible in and out of the office. I kept them on 2 different machines because I didn't want the machine with ports open to the internet to have access to customers' proprietary info.
Good policy.
I'm adding asterisks for our phone system, and I was planning on putting it on the same machine as the LAMP server since it needs ports out to the internet as well. Watching back issues of your show, including the Proxmox episode, I think I missed the boat as far as virtualization goes, but I have a few questions. This is really good. The exact kind of thing where you start down a path and then you realize, oh, actually virtualization might be good here.
Right.
And it's sometimes why it's best to start with virtualization. But so he says here, should I be doing all of my serving off of one machine? The loads are really light on all 3 systems, and I have pretty decent hardware serving it all up. Question number 2. I'm guessing the physical drives for the Samba server can be kept completely isolated from, say, the LAMP server, correct? Yes, that is correct. But why don't we just answer these in order? Number 1, yeah, you can do that. Absolutely. If sometimes people are a little nervous about having machines that are exposed to the internet and the internal network on the same virtual machine, so
it's understandable.
The only way around that is to have them on separately physical machines.
Sure.
However, I have seen it done a lot, and as long as you keep your virtualization software up to date and you're willing to accept the smaller risk there, because what you really have to worry about is if something can jump between isolated virtual machines. And the Proxmox system relies on KVM. KVM is down to the kernel level. It's very secure. It's done very well. There's been one minor problem in the past, but it's been patched and fixed. And then his third question. We are planning on having the information system on the LAMP server initiate calls in asterisk. Oh, that's cool. So they're going to have like a web interface.
Oh, that's neat.
I've never implemented it yet, but can I do it by dropping a file with the call information in a specified directory, and asterisk will make the call and consume the file? Would it be best to put the LAMP and asterisk servers in their own VMs with common access to a directory? Should that directory be on an NFS server in its own VM? Or would they be better combined into a single VM? Right now, I prefer being able to reboot asterisk without taking down the MySQL machine. Well, he just answered his own question right there.
Yeah.
You absolutely could then just do that over a shared NFS
He just needed
mount.
to talk his way through it, sure.
Yeah, if you with virtualization, there's much less cost in running multiple machines. So if you want to have asterisks isolated out onto its own separate machine, so that way you can reboot it independently. Yeah. And sometimes that's very handy, especially with asterisks actually.
Oh, totally.
So I would recommend that. And then this fourth question: should the SSD and hard drives be on the local machine, or should they reside on a separate physical machine that is strictly an NFS server? Now, this is what he's really asking here. Should I have my virtualization and VMs on local hard drives or on the network?
Right.
So the advantage to having them on the network is you can move where the virtual machine runs. So you can move between systems.
More control there.
Centralized storage means it's less dependent on which virtual host it lives on. The downside, however, is performance. So if you're not going to be moving your virtual machine around a lot, which you probably doesn't sound like you will be, I would do a combination of things. I would put the operating system and if you have small critical data on physical machines in the virtual host. And then the shared data goes on NFS mounts, stuff that doesn't have to be accessed quite as fast. Now, I've done it both ways. In fact, the client that I spend most of my time working on their virtualization environment almost runs everything off NFS shares, all the hard drives of all the virtual machines. And we're probably talking about 14, 15 virtual machines.
Wow.
I find it to be slow. I find it to be unreliable, and I wouldn't recommend doing it fully like that. But they do it, and as long as your NFS server is solid, they actually don't really seem to have too many problems.
Which option is going to provide the most
stability?
Well, like if they find they end up needing to adapt or change or add to, which is a safer bet?
I like the combo of putting some stuff on local drives like the operating system and putting all of your data, so like all the user directories on NFS.
Okay,
but yeah. If you've got a good fast network, maybe you could put it all on NFS.
Okay.
He says also he's got a follow-up question to NFS. He says on NFS server or Samba for that matter, what file system is preferred? ZFS. In fact, ZFS. I've talked about it before on this show. ZFS is the single thing that is hurting Linux on the server space in the biggest way, in my opinion.
Right.
I just read, thanks to somebody who linked it in the Linux Action Show subreddit, there was a story about how the KDE project almost lost their whole Git repo because of an ext4 corruption issue.
Oh, man.
And they are switching now. They run all OpenSUSE, and they're switching to ZFS.
Wow.
And
that should be a pretty good indication of what you should be considering. If they're willing to do that after having an incident, well...
And the thing about ZFS that's really powerful in a virtual environment is the snapshotting capability of ZFS, because you can not only will the VM environment be capable of taking snapshots, but you actually at a ZFS level could take entire snapshots of the system, which is really great before you do any kind of major changes or anything like that. So
gotta love that.
It's tough to recommend that somebody put ZFS in production under Linux.
Right.
But at this point, we're seeing enough people report success that it's probably worth investigating. And
I guess as long as the data is safe at some granular level,
you got it backed up.
Yeah,
if you're backing up,
if worst case you roll into something else, but at least you've got the data. So yeah.
And then his last question is a single NIC appropriate, or should each virtual machine be given its own NIC? You could do the individual NICs for the ones that are talking to the internet directly. Right. That might be a nice way to do that. Sounds like for your performance requirements, I mean, you're talking, a stack that's used by 10 or so people, you don't really need one single network card will be just fine. Right. And also, just a quick shout out to all the other folks who chimed in over on the Jupiter Colony and answered some of his questions, like William and Jungle Boogie, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's
nice,
great.
Giving them
good job, guys.
Additional info there. Yeah,
good job.
Don't forget, we do have the Jupiter Colony. If you go to Google Plus and search for Jupiter Colony, that's our official community over there. And also, if you go to jbgame.tv, that'll send you to the gaming one. We have a gaming community, and over there we got info for the Jupiter Minecraft servers. You can go play Minecraft with some of your fellow Linux Action Show viewers and stuff like that.
Good community stuff.
Yeah. Keith writes in with a potential open source Google Reader replacement.
This is interesting. Nice timing, by the way.
There's a great story for us to cover, he says. It ties in with a recent request for an alternative Google Reader, NewsBlur.
Oh.
The guy developing it is open sourcing it, always part of the plan.
Cool.
And the whole Google Reader shutdown fiasco is about to make him go from a lone developer struggling to make a business out of it.
Whoa.
And he includes a link to the blog post over at NewsBlur. Now, NewsBlur was probably one of the #1 recommended replacements that we got email from.
Well, and I wonder, I'm curious now, how is he going to make a business out of that? That's interesting.
Let's see.
Storage?
He says, doesn't really say here in his post. He goes on to say he likes all the shows.
Cool.
He worked in radio for some time, and I think your work beats out most of what's in traditional radio these days.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. Right on.
I don't know how you keep up your pace, but if you can keep it up, you could be one of the greats. Well, I don't know how we do it either, to be honest with you.
Awesome.
By momentum, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll link to in his email, he has a link to the blog post. He says 3 months to scale NewsBlur. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to be watching this. Definitely going to be watching
your timing is dynamite. Yeah.
PayPal's fraud department just called and asked me what's going on. He's getting so many donations.
See, and that's what I tell people about PayPal. Be careful.
Well, Bitcoin, Matt. Maybe you'll take Bitcoin donations.
Yeah. Hey, you're an early adopter. Get on it.
Thank you, Keith, for sending that in. That is something we'll definitely watch.
Definitely.
All right, we'll do one more email. We didn't get a chance to do any more. I apologize to everybody who sent something in. You guys keep it up, though. We might eventually just break down and start a new show just to cover all those
we're almost to that point. It's like,
All right, so this one came in from Prad. I'm just going to call him Jean-Luc. So Jean-Luc writes, "Hi, Chris and Matt. I happened to stumble upon your channel a little over a year ago, and the first episode I watched had me hooked. You guys really do a great job of presenting all the latest happenings in the Linux world." Well, thanks. Thank you, Jean-Luc. He says, "I'm a performance engineer, and all of my tools at work are Windows-based, and I love them. But at home, I run OpenSUSE 12.2 as my laptop came with a horrid Windows Vista. After hopping through many different distros, I've finally settled on OpenSUSE, as for me, it's very stable and has the best KDE implementation."
It does, actually. I would agree with that, actually.
Now, here's why I picked his question, because his the next part of his question, I think, really probably hits a lot of new Linux users as something that just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And I think we got to talk about this. He says, "I'm not a hardcore developer. In fact, he considers himself to be a noob to Linux. But I want to know why it is that whatever a distro release, a new version of all the packages has to be redone and moved into the new repos for that versions. And files are packaged in .debs or RPMs. Why can't all the versions be agnostic? If it's difficult to upgrade to a new version, considering all the packages will not be available immediately," because he's probably run into this or something.
Right. Yeah.
He says, "Does this not waste a lot of space having to host all these multiple versions of the packages, the bandwidth, downloading new repos? It's impossible to have a system like Windows where a .exe file, in most cases, can just be installed on any version of Windows and run."
Well, there have been some really interesting, like I think the Click project, it was like KLIK or something like that. You know, where it was basically it's like standalone, OS 10 style packaging, to where it really was self-contained, and you updated it, didn't affect your system one way or the other.
Right.
There have been a lot of that, and honestly. There were, of course, then the problem was then knowing about updates. That was always an issue. So I think that everybody's kind of settled on their own thing. I mean, maybe you have some additional insights.
Well, I think the biggest thing is in open source is it's so collaborative based. Because the code is available for everyone to use. I write part of my application, but since this library already implements the way I need to draw this thing on your screen,
right,
I just use that library, and I don't need to spend years of time inventing how that's done. So that's one of the reasons open source can develop so rapidly. That's why you can see a new distro release every 6 months or every 8 months or whatever it is. But the downside is that these programs then become dependent on those libraries.
Right.
And those libraries will have new versions, and the programs will have new versions, and you have to roll them together. And since they all it's a big web of interdependency, they all have to go together. So what the distros do to solve this is they snapshot it at that point in time where they know everything's working together. They put that up on the repo, and then that's what you have to use. Yeah. The downside is exactly what you talked about. A lot of people come to Linux expecting to be able to just download a binary and run it forever. And this is something the PCBSD project is trying to work with.
Right.
You download their installer, it makes a copy of all the libraries just for that version in its own folder, and they try to solve that problem.
Oh, and they do a pretty fair job of it. And then, of course, there's other distributions like Arch, to where it's pretty much always bleeding edge anyway, and you just don't care. I mean, you're pretty much good to go. So
I think also there's a little bit of a... Everybody kind of has their own way of doing things. That's why you have RPM and debs and tar.gz files, and everybody just kind of...
There's a number of cooks in the kitchen, really.
There has been so many conversations over the years about one universal package management format that rules them all, and the closest I think we're ever going to get is to somebody to just put an abstraction layer over all of this, like OpenSUSE is doing with the build service.
Honestly, right? yeah. I would agree with that, actually. That
just make it so the user is completely unaware. Let the technology handle. That's got to be where I think Linux is going with this stuff.
Because going bleeding edge Arch style isn't always applicable to every distribution out there. So
right, and I mean, sorry, Jean-Luc, about the struggles with that, but
it's kind of a bummer, but such is life.
All right, Matt. So what are you up to this week?
As always, you can find me at datamation.com. Scroll down to open source, click in there, and you'll see me. And I've got articles there, and of course, I'm also on Facebook. It's I believe it's Matt Hartley Public.
You're so crazy.
That's so crazy.
You're also on the Twitter and the G+.
I'm on Twitter and the G+.
We have links to his profiles and mine. To get mine, you just go to bit.ly/Chris Fisher. Make that easy. But we do link that in the show notes.
You can find my articles weekly. I'm always there.
So. You're a powerhouse.
I'm there.
Powerhouse. All right. So also, just one more plug for that Bitcoin show draft. If you have a passion for Bitcoin and you're maybe have a good working mic, that'd be a good requirement.
Yeah, that would help.
Go fill out the form. I have a series of questions over there to try to weed out some of the qualifiers. Go to bit.ly/Bitcoin draft if you'd like to join me on a Bitcoin show. You never know. We could make something awesome.
That would be cool.
Be a lot of fun.
That'd be really cool.
And maybe we'll get going. We'll realize it's not our thing, and We'll do a couple shows and that'll be it. So we'll see. But it's
and
worth
replace it with an email show. You never know.
You know, seriously, an email show might be the way to go. So look, we would love to hear from you. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and hit that contact link at the top of our site, and then choose the Linux Action Show from the drop-down box, and you can leave us an email, or go over to our awesome subreddit over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. And that's usually a great supplement to the show. So if Linux Action Show wraps up and you're like, damn, I want more show, go over to the subreddit. You'll get a lot more show there. Plus, we have the feedback thread, so you can leave us thoughts on this week's episode or give us an idea for next week, which is going to be an OwnCloud 5 review.
Ooh, yeah.
Which has a built-in Google Reader component. I'm going to be really interested to try.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, sort of a Google Reader. So we'll see how OwnCloud 5, which is boasting a lot of great new features. So we'll talk about that.
They're pushing hard.
Yeah.
Pushing hard.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. Another segment, I think it's official. Our show will have reached the point where it is too big to fail.
Yep.
And if our podcast ever has issues, the podcast community must bail us out.
That's right.
All right, so here we go, and I'll start us off.
What do you do with your hands?
Usually make a jackass out of myself.
That's what you do.